So these are going to be our class expectations. So the first thing I want to say is that Dakota language has always been an oral language. We didn't have a written language until after the missionaries created it for us. And that was designed just to be able to translate the Bible into the language and in turn create more converts for Christianity. And so we've really only had a written language for about, between 150, 200 years. And so things aren't as ironed out as they are in English or other languages that have been writing for hundreds or thousands of years. And so in Dakota, a lot of times you're going to see different spellings or things are written different ways. You might see little different markings over different letters or stuff like that. I use what's called an altered Riggs orthography. So basically an alphabet from the Riggs stuff. So if you get any of those old dictionaries that are written by Riggs or Williamson, that's pretty much the alphabet that I use. And when you guys grew up or things like that, you might have heard words said a certain way. I might say them a little bit differently or things like that, but I just want to point out that it doesn't mean that I'm right and you're wrong, or you're right and I'm wrong. Just like English, you might say soda, you might say pop, you might say, whatever, some little name that you called it growing up with your mom and dad. And that's how Dakota is. People speak differently from family to family and community to community. And people have different little things, the way that they said things growing up. And so when we teach language, or when I teach language, I like to stress that there's always going to be another way to say something. And so one thing I want to point out is that if you grew up saying igmu or ihmu for cat, I say pusida, then you're never ever going to forget igmu or ihmu. And so, I'd say just keep an open mind. And if you hear something differently, try to learn another way to say it, because that just makes your speaking stronger. And so this is going to be our first class. So like I said before, we're going to start with the basics, just basic introductions, things like that. And we're trying to build a foundation for this class. And so if you got any constructive criticism or feedback, just, let us know. Email either Ray or I, or, post a comment on the Facebook, or however you want to get those messages to us. We welcome it. We'll welcome the feedback so that we can have better classes in the future. Again, if you're not in a quiet space, just for the to help the other participants be able to hear and stuff, mute your microphone. I know if you're on a computer, you could push mute, and then if you want to say something, you could just hold the space bar down while you're talking, and it'll unmute you. And then when you let go of the space bar, it'll mute you again. And so that's kind of like a push to talk feature. And I'm getting text messages about not being able to log in. So hopefully we get everybody in here. And then the next thing I want to say is just please participate. It might feel, even if you're muted or, you got something, if I say, repeat after me, I want all the men to repeat after me, then repeat it back. The more that you participate, the easier it'll be for you to learn. And so participation is key. And also another thing I want to point out at this point is that the more that you use these words, whatever we teach today, whatever we teach this week or next week or wherever, the more you use these words, the more comfortable you're going to be with them. And so I'll get into that a little bit more when we get into the language. But I'm going to encourage everybody to use as much language as you can every day. And the next thing is that language is hard, right? It's hard to learn another language. A lot of us have taken Spanish or German or French or some other languages, and they can be hard. And so there's no stupid questions here. If you got a question, if you are having trouble with this or that or something, just let me know. Raise your hand. If you're in the chat and you got a question, raise your hand, type it in the chat. I'll get to every question and every raised hand. If you got a question tomorrow about something, get a hold of me. Send me a message on Messenger, send me a text, or, get a hold of me however you can. And yeah, and the next thing, just enjoy yourself. We want to be in, when we're learning language, we want to be in an alpha brain state, so have fun. Have fun learning language. Don't take it too seriously, it's got to be taken serious to an extent, but it can't be to the point where you're not having fun learning. So that's going to be a key, is to enjoy yourself. So some of the first things I want to say, how medakepi Arthur Lockwood and Machapika Titawita Hechita Machaga Christine Sellers hey Inawega Claudine Sellers hey Kushuwa. So hello my relatives. My name is Arthur Lockwood. I was raised on Prairie Island. I'm a Dakota. My mom is Christine Sellers and my grandma is Claudine Sellers. And so for those of you who don't know who I am, a brief introduction there. And I just want to explain, the next question, why do I teach Dakota language? So when I was growing up on the island, I was still pretty secluded. Some kids were going to town a lot. I wasn't one of them. And, so I spent a lot of time on the island. And as I grew up, as I got into my teenage years, some of you might remember that time. But, late into my teenage years, I really had this kind of burning fire in my soul that was trying to tell me to come back to the culture and the language. And I had this question when I was about 16, 17. I was at I got shipped off to a placement. And when I was out there, I was talking to my grandma and I told her that I want to learn language. And so she brought me a dictionary. And while I was out there, I started taking a word every day. I had this prayer I would say at night. It was a pretty long prayer. I had nothing but time while I was there. And so I was saying this prayer, and then each day I would take a word out of this prayer and I would switch it over into the language. And I was really, everything was mispronounced. I didn't have a single word that was pronounced right. The grammar was like non-existent. I was just putting Dakota words in where English words were. But I had thought about this question. I was like, I'm a half breed. I'm a mixed blood, and I'm like, I look white. And I'm like, what if an elder tries to speak language to me? I'm like, how would I respond? What would I do? I can't understand my language. And that question really drove me to learn the language. And I almost can't really explain some of those thought processes that went into it, but I just had this uncontrollable urge to go and learn. And so I started to learn, and once I learned, I felt I felt very, very much so empowered by the language. When me and my brother Sheldon would go out and go to a restaurant and eat, and we were just speaking in the language, it was empowering. It made me feel like I was on top of the world. I'm like, oh man, I'm speaking Dakota, nothing but Dakota at this restaurant. Nobody around us can understand us. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. And I teach Dakota because I want I want the whole community to be like that. I want the whole community to have that ability to go out. If we go to a quarterly and we can just speak in the language, or if we go to, if any one of us goes out to a restaurant together, to be able to speak to each other in the language, have those conversations, and have that same empowerment that's like, I know who I am and I'm comfortable with who I am. So we'll jump right into it. So here, or how for females and for males is how you say hello in Dakota. So a lot of people probably hear me, when I'm going around, if I talk to people, I'm like, ho, and that's the way I say how. Some people, when they see each other, how, things like that. But me, I'm like, ho. And so if I could get, all the men, if there's men in the chat, all the men, repeat after me. How. What I want people to do is to internalize this, internalize the language. Don't think about it like it's a foreign language. Think about it like this is your parents, this is your grandparents' language. And so when you see each other, or when you talk to each other, say how instead of hello. When I see random people, I'll be walking down the street and some random guy like looks at me, I'm like, huh? And he's like, hello. He doesn't even realize that it's a different word. Huh? And so I want everybody to be that comfortable when they're speaking. Don't be shy and don't be scared to be like, how.
Well, everything is turned off right now.
What's that? Oh, sorry, I thought we had a question. So real quickly, because there's a few people joining late, I just want to remind everybody that the class is being recorded. So if you don't want your face to be recorded, turn your camera off. And then also some of the things we went over at the beginning, if you got things going on in the background or it's kind of loud, just mute your microphone so that nobody else, so everybody else can hear what's going on. Please and thank you. So again, like I was saying,
getting walked on there a little bit.
We want everybody to be comfortable. So when you're starting to speak the language, you go like me. If you see me out, I'm gonna be like, oh, or I'm gonna be like, how, and reciprocate that, bring that back. And so
Arthur,
when you're sitting, even today after this class, when you're sitting by yourself, just practice and get comfortable with these words. And so now I'll go for the females, all the females who are listening. If you're gonna say hello in Dakota, it's huh. So if you want to repeat after me, And so we got a couple of relatives who are pretty good at speaking Dakota to each other, or speaking Dakota in public and saying huh. So there's a couple people out in our community where if you see them, and they're going to be real animated when they say it too, huh, things like that. And that stuff is empowering for me, for all of us.
Arthur, can you hear me?
Yeah.
You're getting walked over quite a bit.
All right, I just want to encourage everybody, if you got things going on in the background, please mute your microphone.
I know things are easy on the iPhone, but please write back soon.
Okay, do we have it?
Arthur, I just muted everybody just for a moment. If you want to speak, please unmute yourself, but just so that people can hear you, because if there's background noise for anybody, everybody's going to struggle to hear you. So you should be good, Arthur. And then for everybody else, if you want to speak, just make sure to unmute yourself and then remute yourself when you're done speaking.
For sure. Thank you.
Yep.
So the next thing, so we got into for males, we're gonna say how. For females, we'll say huh. When you're in a formal setting, if you're gonna talk in front of people or things like that, one of the most common ways you're gonna hear somebody start their conversation is ha medakepi, and or for females ha medakepi, and so medakepi means my relatives. Dakuyepi is relatives. Midakuyepi, that means my relatives. Ha medakuyepi means hello, my relatives. And so if everybody wants to, well, first we'll do all the females in the chat, all the women in the chat, repeat after me. Ha medakuyepi.
Ha medakuyepi.
Ha medakuyepi.
Ha medakuyepi.
So if you hear, the way I say it, I say it, when I say it, it comes from my heart. It comes from inside, where it's like second nature to be able to say, how medakepi. And like I said, it's gonna take some practice. Nobody's gonna be a fluent speaker by the end of this class. Nobody's gonna be a fluent speaker by the end of the day. But the more you practice, the more you participate, then the better you're gonna be. Yeah.
I have a question. So when you hear someone say "oh how," is that different, or does that have a different different reading or a different meaning?
Like oh huh or something like that. Oh huh.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's a little different. It's an acknowledgement, the same, but it's more like okay, like how we say okay in English. So if you say something to someone, they're like, oh huh, that's like, all right, okay.
Okay, yeah, because I've heard that before, and I was always wondering.
Yeah. It's an acknowledgement too, but yeah, it's more like okay or all right. So medakuyepi, my relatives, medakuyepi. One of the things people get hung up on, and that's, there's a huge push from different teachers where there's a lot of people who are very strong in thinking that writing, that almost like the language should not be written down. I've heard it, elders used to say that, people still say it today, that we don't want to write the language down. And one of the things that I noticed is that people, when they write the language, they overpronounce everything, so you're like, midakuyepi, midakuyepi. You read every word and overpronounce it. Whereas when you grow up with the language, or if you speak the language fluently, or you listen to elders, they don't talk that slow, and they don't break, they don't pronounce every syllable like that. And so when I say it, ha medakuyepi, ha medakuyepi, that's how we should all strive to say it, in a way that's comfortable, that comes from inside. Ha medakuyepi. So yeah, no, that's cool. So the next thing I want to point out is ye and do. So you're gonna hear these at the end of sentences. A lot of times when people first start learning, they use them a lot at the end of like every sentence. By the time, later on, or you listen to fluent speakers, they're not going to say do after every sentence. They might put it at the end of a thought. So they'll talk and they'll say different things, and they'll say a few sentences, and then they'll kind of end their thought with do. The same thing with females, yeah. So one of the easiest examples, we had it written on the first page, pidamaya ye. So pidamaya ye is kind of non-gender specific, right? For females, they'll say pidamaya ye, yeah, right? And that yeah kind of ends that thought. And for males, pidamaya ye do. When you get later on, like if I see one of my brothers or something, and we're talking the language, I'll say, oh, pidamado, stuff like that. So you kind of shorten it up, but you gotta know what you're saying before you shorten things down. And so, yeah, if you hear yeah at the end of stuff, it's like gonna be ending a sentence or ending a thought, and the same with do. So this next word is emakyapi. So I'll have everybody repeat after me. Emakyapi,
Makiapi.
Makyapi.
emakyapi,
Makiapi.
emakyapi. So emakyapi means people translate it to my name is, but really it's like they call me or they tell me. Emakyapi, emakyapi. So emakyapi, like I said, they call me. So I would say Arthur Lockwood emakyapi, or Arthur Lockwood emakyapiro, emakyapiro. Females, Arthur Lockwood emakyapiye, emakyapiye. That's my best female impersonation.
Makyapi.
I'll be here all week, so. So yeah, if so, just for if all the females want to repeat after me, emakyapiye, emakyapiye,
Makiapi.
emakyapiye.
Makiapi.
And so, if you hear the way I say it, I kind of got a little snap on that kia, emakya, emakyapi. So yeah, emakyapi.
So when you do the male version, I noticed that when you say Makyapi do instead of Makyapi, like you do with the
Oh
female
yeah,
version.
almost like pe. Yeah, it's almost
Yep.
changing that p to a pe.
Yep.
Emakyapido.
Yep.
Yeah, that's just an enunciation thing. You're gonna see it written down. When you see it written, it's like this. Emakyapido, emakyapido. Yeah, so that's just kind of enunciation. It's not really yeah, when you break down the word emakya, if you're gonna tell somebody, you could use that word like in a command. Emakya, like tell me. So if you say emakyapi, it means they call me or they tell me. And so emakyapido, emakyapido, something like that. It's just enunciation. Emakyapido. So the next thing, so we learned how, or we've gone over how to say my name is. The next thing is, what is your name? And so in Dakota, we don't say what, we say how. And so dokid means how, and nichiapi is the same like emakyapi, but it's for you, and nichiapi. Dokid and nichiapi, how do they call you? Is how we say it in Dakota. That's how we say, what is your name? Dokid and nichiapi. So if everyone wants to repeat after me, dokid and nichiapi, he.
Tokerenitiapi, he.
Dokid and nichiapi, he.
Makiapi.
So one thing I want to point out is that when you're asking questions in Dakota, sometimes you'll hear it, but most of the time, probably 75% of the time, instead of in English, when you ask a question, it goes up at the end. In Dakota, it's kind of even, or if not, drops down. So it kind of goes like that.
So is a Nichiape, is that your name? Or what is
Yeah, it's how do they call you, or what is your name?
Dokade means who?
How?
Dokid means how. Yep.
How?
What does
Oh, how?
what does he mean at the end?
Hey,
Is that
it's
you?
like a question mark.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so at the end of questions, whenever we ask a question, then we're gonna have hey at the end. Most of the time, when you get real comfortable with someone, I might use them as an example of a couple times during this class, but Grandpa Art he used to put has at the end of sentences, so he'd be like, hey do he, or like, hey hokshida do he, and so when you understand the language, sometimes hey, it's not always a question mark, but when we're just for the basics and to keep things simple, whenever you hear hey at the end, you can kind of assume that's going to be a question. And so look at the Nichiapi, hey.
Dokade Nichiape, hey?
Yep. What's your name? How do they call you?
And there's no male or female for that.
Nope. Some people, like if you go to different communities, they might say that, right? You go to a different community, they might say, well, men say "Dokadenichiapi ho," which I've heard many times. Some people are gonna say, well, women say "Dokadenichiapi he," you know, or they don't say yeah, they say "shto," or they have different things when you go different places. But for us, for our dialect, we don't have that. There's no separation when it comes to questions. So men and women will both end questions the same way. Yeah. So now we got time to practice. So if you have, if you got kids around you or you got other relatives around you that you can practice with, you can practice with them. If anybody wants to practice with people in the group or practice with me or Ray, go ahead and click the raise your hand button or kind of type your name in the chat or something. Yeah, so we got Ray's got her hand raised. Anybody else who wants to help participate, go ahead, raise your hand. So I'll give a quick example. So it might be a little weird because I'm gonna call them out. I'll call her out by name first, but Ray, Dokadenichiapi he.
Ray Amakiapi.
Ray Amakiapi. So that's how you would respond. So you say, you ask, what is your name? Dokadenichiapi he. And then when you respond, you'll say Arthur Amakiapi. Amakiapi, or for men, Amakiaparo.
So will you have those listed somewhere so we could read them while we practice?
Yep. Yeah, when we get done with everything, we're gonna send out a word list.
No, I
And
mean,
then we're
like
also
right now,
gonna post the video.
I mean, like right now when we're trying to practice with someone else.
There we go.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, I'm sure I'll butcher it. So.
Yeah. Vaughn, Dokadenichiapi he.
Crap. Oh. No, wait, didn't you just ask me? Okay, so
Yep.
yeah. I think I'm making it harder than this.
Yeah, Amakiapi.
Makiapi.
Yeah.
Makiapi do. Bon.
Yeah. Vaughn Amakiapi.
Bon and Makiapi.
Yep.
I don't have
There
to say
you go.
do. Bon
I
and
mean, yeah.
Makiapi.
Yep. Yeah. Amakiaparo.
Oh, I see. There's a space in front of Makiapi do.
Yep. Yeah. So you put your name there. Yep.
Your name first and then okay.
Yep. Whatever you're talking about comes first. Whenever you're speaking in Dakota. So
the subject comes first?
yep, subject first. So yeah, if I don't know, you wanna ask me again, Ray?
Yeah. Arthur Dokadenichiapi.
Oh, Arthur Amakiaparo.
Hmm.
Nishto. So that's another thing. We didn't put that on the word list. Maybe we can edit some of that before we post them or send them out. But if we put a word list, one thing you could say is nishto. Nishto means like you too or and you. So yeah, if someone asks you, you say Arthur Nishto, or Arthur Amakiapi Nishto. My name's Arthur. How about you? Sometimes too. Yeah, go ahead.
For a woman, would you say Nishie?
No. Nishto is like ni is for you, and that ishto or whatever is like but that's really the only time you use it. Or it's like also or two, so like nishto, like you also or you too, you as well. Yeah. So and that's the only time you'll use nishto is when you're asking that question. How about you? If you're like reciprocating a question right back to somebody, they say, Arthur Makiapi Nishto. How about you? It's kind of like going right back. Then you'll say Nishto. Yeah, yep, niche, kind of. So nishto, is like niche can be shortened from nishto, but what niche really is short for is nija. Nija. So that's a little bit of a different word, but nija means you too also, but it doesn't, you can't really use that when, if you're like in that context. So niche means like how about you? Are you too? Like for in a different context.
Like, what about you? No.
Yeah, like how about you? Right? So like just for an example, like you couldn't say like, so for niche you could say niche ya chin hai, you too, do you want this? Niche ya chin hai, right? So that's an example. Nija ya chin hai, you want that too, or do you want some too? So but you couldn't say like nishto ya chin hai, that doesn't make any sense, you know what I mean? So nishto is like when you're saying how about you, just like to a question, nishto. But then like niche is more short for like nija, for you too. So it can be, you know, the different contexts for those two things can be kind of confusing, but you know, in Spanish, I don't know how many people took Spanish, but I remember when I was in Spanish in like middle school or something, they're like, eat two, right? You'd be like, eat two or whatever. So when someone would ask like, what's your name or how are you? You're like, you know, washte, or you'd be like, bien, eat two, like good, and you. So in Dakota, it'd be like, washte, nishto, like good, and you.
Washte Nisha. Nishta.
Yeah, yep, exactly, Brandon. So Brandon says, you say have a good day, I say niche. You could, or you could say nishto, because you're pushing that right back. So if somebody says, yeah, ampetu washte doha, you know, ampetu washte yoha, have a good day. Nishto, you know, you too, or nisha. Yeah, you could say niche. You could use like either or for that context. It's kind of, it might be a little off, but you could use niche or nisha in a lot more scenarios than you can use nishto. So nishto is only when you're pushing the same question right back, you know, or the same thing like right back to somebody, like kind of like back at you. Does anybody say back at you in English?
Mhm.
All right, that's how nishto means in Dakota. It's like back at you, nishto. And then the next one's like niche miniachi. Yeah, you could say that. Like how like and you or you too. Do you want water? Niche niche miniachi. So you could say like, say I ask Rihanna, miniachi, do you want water? And she'll say, huh, miniachi. And then I say, all right, Kim, niche miniachi, you too. Do you want water? So that's like that context for that one, without getting too far ahead of ourselves.
Arthur, will you read the questions that people
Yeah.
ask before you answer them?
Yep. So the next question, this sounds like speaking to someone familiar. Would you address a stranger or an elder in a formal way? It's kind of tough, you know. When I try to think back to when I was put into those situations, when I tried to speak Dakota to people around the community, I knew them, you know. And so I could just try whatever. When I learned language, the person I learned with, I mean, we spent a lot of time together. So when you first meet somebody, like if I first meet an elder and someone says, they're Dakota, this person speaks Dakota, then I would probably address them, you know, obviously with the introductory sentence, you know, as you learn more words and more kind of things, you'll be able to like plug and play those. If I met an elder today that I didn't know and they spoke Dakota, I would say ho. I would say ho the same way that I say it. And then I don't know. I'm not really like a formal type of person, so I'd probably be like, "Oh, hey, like I heard you speak Dakota or something." I don't know. You know, some like little icebreaker sentence. Let's see. So let's go ahead and so yeah, if there's formal ways to say things, but a lot of times when you're speaking language as of right now, it's in like a close proximity kind of context. And so yeah, if you're speaking to somebody, just to answer the last question, if you're speaking to a stranger, when I meet a stranger, I'd probably be like, ho kora, you know, tokadio, how are you? So we're gonna use the same kind of sentences and stuff as we do here. All right, so does anybody else want to raise their hand and participate in the Amakyapi, Dokudinichiapi section? All right, so just for one last example, I'll ask again, Rana, Dokudinichiapi, he?
Ray Amakiapi. Niche?
Oh, Arthur Amakyapido. So that's kind of how a quick version of that would go. So we had our time to practice. So we have huh and how on here again. What I wanted to point out this time is that it's not hello, it's yes. So in Dakota, when you say hello to somebody, for females, you'll say huh, and for males, you'll say how. Those are all types of acknowledgments, right? So that's the same way you're going to say yes. That's the same way you're going to say you're welcome. So if somebody tells you pidamaya, you say huh, and that means you're welcome. That you're acknowledging that they're saying pidamaya, thank you. So you're asking a question, someone asks you a question, yes or no, you say how, yes, how, or ho, the same way like you would say hello. So however you're comfortable saying that, like I said, for me, I'm more like oh. Some people are like how, you know. And so for females, I just got pointed out by somebody for females. Like I said, ho koda a second ago. For females, you'll say ha mashke. Mashke is the way that females say koda. So koda is a male only word. Mashke is like for females, it means friend. Then the opposite for how is hia. So I know when I was growing up and I was doing something wrong, my grandma would be like, hia. She'd really be getting after me, just snapping that hia at me. But, you know, so I remember when I was a teenager, I'd be getting after my little brother and sister too. And they'd be saying something, I'd be like, hia, just really yelling at them. But, you know, now that, you know, in speaking the language, you know, hia is really common. So I remember when me and my brother were on the road, we spent like several weeks on the road. And when I would ask him questions, he would always be like, ho, or hia. And so I'd ask him something and I'd be looking out the window, I'd be like, oh yeah, you know, are we almost to Bismarck or something? He'd be like, ho. And I'd be like, no. And he's like, ho. I'm like, no. And he'd like look at me and be like, ho. I'm like, oh, ho, okay, I got it. And the same thing with hia. I'd ask him something, you know, I'd be like, hia. And I would hear the ya at the end. And I'd be like, yeah? And he's like, hia. I'm like, yeah? And so we kind of go back and forth like that. Like, you know, I know he got frustrated sometimes, but he didn't really show it. You know, he just kept repeating things. If I got it wrong, he'd just repeat it again and tell me again. So that's something that, you know, you kind of got to get your ears used to hearing Dakota. You know, before that road trip, I spent 20 years of my life, 19 years of my life hearing yes and no. And then, you know, we spend weeks on the road, me and a fluent speaker, and he's only answering me in Dakota. And so I had to get used to hearing ho and hia and things like that. Hia. And so if again I can get everybody in the chat to repeat after me, hia,
Yeah.
hia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you could put with this, it's the same like English, right? So if you got like a little, you know, say you got one of the kids, you know, messing with you or asking you for something, you're upset, you're like, yeah, you know, like, no, that's how my grandma talked to me. And then, but other times, you know, say you got a kid or, you know, somebody, you know, I guess it doesn't have to be a kid, but I just got a lot of kids in my house. And so say you got somebody, you know, a kid who's asking you, you know, the same question over and over or something, you're just kind of like, yeah, you know, you kind of put that little sarcasm or that little emphasis on it, like, yeah, you know, stuff like that. That's how we want to get comfortable with the language, or we could put that emotion into it, the same emotion we would put into English, you know. So one more time, I'll have everybody repeat after me. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So that's how you say no. Yeah.
Yeah.
Next we have shicha. I don't know if anyone in the class has ever heard this word before, but I used to hear it when I was a kid. And you know, it was one of the few words that my grandma used with me. She didn't use a whole lot, but she used a few, you know, like chahampi, wahampi, shunka, unkdomi, hiya, shicha, you know, things like that. She'd be like, that's shicha, you know. And so shicha means bad. And so if I can, we'll have everybody repeat after me. Shicha,
Shicha.
Chicha.
shicha,
Shicha.
Chicha.
shicha.
Shicha.
So we kind of want to get comfortable with it. You know, if you go into my classroom, you'll see there's 3 different C's on the wall, right? I have a alphabet line on my wall. There's 3 different C's. So the first one's kind of like a J. It's like a soft C, shicha. And that's the C that we have here, shicha, shicha.
Chicha.
Yep, shicha. The next one is washte. So when I was a kid, I probably heard this more than when I was a teenager, but washte means good. And so I know some people might be very familiar with a bunch of the words we've done today, but some people may not be. I want to teach, the point of this class is to have people, or have words that people can use every day. You can use these with your kids. You could use these with your brother, your sister, your parents. So if I could have everybody repeat after me, washte,
Washte.
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 And this, I like to point out, I pointed it out to Ray the other day, but you know, if somebody asks you a question, when you get real comfortable with this, I know when I talk to elders and stuff, I don't even say the wa. I'll just be like, oh, shte, how, shte, like, yeah, good, you know, how, shte. And that wa is in there, but it kind of just blends in between the how and the shte. How, shte, shte do, how, shte do, you know, so, wa shte do. So that's washte, you know, and it means good. And you can use it anytime like you would use good in English.
So what is the dough?
That's the same thing like we talked about before. That's the ending for males. So males would say washtedo or washtedo, and females would say washteya, washteya. So a lot of times, you might have heard before, you know, it's been real commonplace around language for probably the past 30 years that the E is like a real A, you know, washte. But with the way that I talk and the way that I hear, it's more like an eh, washte, 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 yeah, washte, yeah. So that's something that I would just point out for for everybody. We got a question in the chat. Did you explain why there are endings on a lot of things? Yeah, so earlier we talked about it. So males are going to end their sentences or their thoughts with do, and females end their sentences or thoughts with ye. A lot of times when people first start out, they're ending sentences with do all the time. They're like, how pidamaya do, how washte do, how, you know, he shicha do, hokshida gde washte wadake do, you know, many, you know, many washte wadake do. So, you know, every sentence kind of ends with do. But when you listen to elders and the farther you get, it's kind of like the do comes more after like 3 or 4 sentences when they're kind of ending a thought. They'll be talking, and then all of a sudden they'll put a do in there. That's how you kind of know you can
It's more,
think back and listen, you know, think back to the last few sentences, and that'll be a whole thought.
but I mean, would that mean it's more formal then? Like the concept or the idea that's being said, or the sentence is more formal than just a regular washte? But if you say it like washtero, like, hey, that's really good, or no?
No. So yeah, washte is just gonna mean good. If you want to say like very good or really good, then you'd be like nina washte. Go ahead, nina washte. And then also it's the same like when I said, you know, hiya, where you could be like hiya, you know, like just normal hiya, like no, or you could be like hiya, like no, you know, or you could be like hiya, like no, kid, you know, whatever. So it just depends, you know. The same thing with washte. You'd be like, you know, you could be like, oh, washte, like, yeah, that's good, cool, like, thanks. You know, somebody shows you something you don't really care about, like, oh, washte, you know, whatever. But if somebody, you know, like, say your kid brings in a homework and they got, you know, they got a passing grade, and you're like, washte, you know, like you put that energy into it. However you mean it, that's how you say it, you know. So you're like, washte, nina washte. You know, zapta maku, that's something I tell my daughter all the time. You know, give me 5. She does something good. Oh, chumchi hewashtedo zapta makuo. You know, yeah, that's good. You know, you did good, daughter. Give me 5. Give me 5. And so to get back on point, washte means good. Washte shni means not good. And I know a bunch of us are probably familiar with shni, but washte shni, no good or not good. And so I want to point out that there's a little difference between washte shni and shicha. You know, so something's washte, it's good. Something, hey, washte shni, that's not good. It's no good. Or and then there's shicha, like that's bad. That's just wrong, you know. So yeah. So I know a lot of us in the chat are probably shicha. No, I'm just playing. So when somebody asks you something, I wanted to point this out, and we put washte in this vocab list intentionally, because of the next question that we're gonna learn here. So this next one is dokid yaunha. And so if everybody can repeat after me, dokid yaunha.
Oh, good, yeah.
Dokid yaunha.
Oh, good, yeah.
So dokid, again, we learned this a little bit ago. Dokid means how, like how we use it in English, not how like hello in Dakota. But dokid, and then yaun means you are. And then he means it's a question. So dokid yaun he, how are you? Dokid yaun he. Me personally, whenever I say this, I say it like this. This was the first way I learned to say it. I'll put it like that. Dokid yaun he. Dokid yaun he. And again, like I said, that question kind of comes, it starts high and it drops down. Dokid yaun he. Dokid yaun he, like that. The way that I say it now and the way that, you know, we say it informally with the relatives around, I say dokid yon, dokid yon. And so it almost like I drop that A out, dokid yon. When you say that to elders, they're like, they're right there with you. They get it. A lot of times though, if you say it to second language speakers who've never heard it before, like I've seen people be like kind of deer in headlights when you just say "Tokyo, Tokyo." They're like, "What?" Like they have no idea what you're talking about. The reason why I pointed out, this is the way you say it. This is what I'm really saying when I say Tokyo. I'm saying Tokyo unha. But I say it a little differently. I got our twist on it, the way that we talk. Like I said before, I'll probably use Grandpa Art in the future as an example. Grandpa Art, whenever he asked this question to somebody, he would say, Donikitu. Donikitu. So Dokid, he would stretch Dokid out to Dokitu, because that's what Dokid is short for, Dokitu, and then he would put a knee right in the middle of it for you. Donikitu. Donikitu. And so I say Tokyo, and he says Donikitu. And some people say Donikacha, like what's wrong with you, or how are you? You could use that in a couple of different contexts. Donikacha, like are you okay, or how are you doing, or what's wrong with you? Or you could say Doniktika. Some people say it like that, Doniktika. So those last couple, that's more advanced. But I just want to point out that some people may have heard Dokidyaun before. Some people may have heard Donikitu. But I just listed 5 different ways that you could say how are you. And so that's something that I pointed it out earlier, and I want people to remember that you don't have to remember all 5 ways. But when you talk to different people from different communities, they might ask you in a different way the same question that you're used to hearing. And so you're gonna, when you speak Dakota as a group and as a community, we'll have a consensus of how we usually say things, how most people say things. And then as individuals, we're gonna have the way that we like to say things. And so that's what creates our language. As of right now, the way that I speak, that's the Prairie Island dialect. The way that I talk Dakota. It might not be the Prairie Island dialect from 100 years ago, but it's the way that I speak Dakota, and I'm from Prairie Island. And but as more and more of us start to speak Dakota again, our dialect will be however the majority of us say things. And so each one of us will have that same role in 6 months from now, in a year from now, or 5 or 10 years. The more language that we speak, that's you putting your little piece in how the Prairie Island dialect is spoken. And so we all have the power to shape that for our community and for ourselves. So yeah, if I could have everybody just repeat after me one more time. Dokidyaunha.
Dokidyaun.
Dokidyaunha.
Dokidyaun.
Yep. And we're gonna put out the word list. We're gonna put out the recording so everybody can listen back, and you can listen to how I say it. And I remember when I was learning, I had my brother Sheldon be like, "Bro, say it like this," and I'd be trying to say it. He'd be like, "No, like this," and I'm like, and he was really hammering me like, "Oh, okay, like this," but and sometimes I had the tongue for it, sometimes I didn't, but over time I got the tongue for the language. And that's how we can all be. We might be messing up, something that as easy as this or as hard as that right now, but over time we all have the capability to speak the language together. So the next one, thanks Ray. The next one, washte wa'un. So if I could have, I'll have everybody repeat after me. Washte wa'un. Washte wa'un. So just like dokid ya'un, dokid means how, ya means you, and means like your state or being. Dokid ya'un, how are you? Washte wa'un, I am good. Wa'un means I am. So washte wa'un, I am good. So so if everybody just wants to repeat after me, we'll say it a couple more times. Washte wa'un.
Washte wa'un.
Washte wa'un.
Washte wa'un.
Oh, washte do. So, yeah, we can go on to the next one. Washte wa'un shni. So if everybody wants to repeat that, washte wa'un shni.
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 Yep. And so the more we say it, the more comfortable we can get with it, where we're like, somebody asks you and you just say, washte wa'un shni, or washte wa'un. I wanted to point this out because we had washte and we had shicha. And, you know, if someone asks you, dokid ya'un ha, and you say, shicha wa'un, like I'm bad, then I've only heard that a handful of times. And it really, in Dakota, the words are very literal. You know, so in English, we might say, like, you know, like, yeah, I'm good. Or we might say, you know, we might throw words around more frivolously. But in Dakota, if you say shicha wa'un, then whoever you're talking to should know something's really wrong, you know. And so I want to put washte wa'un shni. It's still the same thing, right? Where it's like, I'm not good. But it's not as hard as shicha, you know. And so now we have time to practice. So again, if anybody wants to participate in the practice time, just click the little raise hand button and I'll pick on you. If you don't want to participate, you know, we'll just ask everybody who does. But I encourage everybody to participate on their own, you know, and even if you don't raise your hand and we don't pick on you in front of everybody, you know, answer the questions and ask the questions to yourself or to the people around you who are listening. And so, you know, Rihanna, dokid ya'un, huh?
Washte wa'un. Nishto?
Oh, Mija, mawashte. And so that was something we talked about too. So you guys got to hear both kind of contexts of that nishto, and then I said Mija, me too. And then I said mawashte. So you could say washte wa'un, or you might hear someone say mawashte, or you might hear someone say dayan wa'un. You know, and they all kind of mean the same thing. I'm good, I'm well. A lot of times, like in a less formal way, you know, you would say, someone asks you, dokid ya'un, huh? You would say, washte wa'un. But in a less formal way, I know when I talk to some of the elders I'm cool with, maybe some of the younger ones who, you know, speak the language and stuff, and I'm like, dokid yo, they're like, washte wa'un do, you know, and they kind of put that little swagger, that little thing into it that makes it their own, you know, washte wa'un do. And so if someone asks me, sometimes that's how I answer. You know, I'll be like, oh, washte wa'un do. You know, and just kind of drag it out a little bit and put that do on there. Washte wa'un do. And so with females, so males are gonna say washte do, washte wa'un do. For females, you would say washte yeah. And I've heard, I don't want to make it too confusing. You can say washte wa'un yeah. I've also heard females say washte wa'un we. Washte wa'un we. And so that's a personal preference, whatever's more comfortable. You know, that's how we want people to talk. That's how I want people to talk. Whatever is comfortable for you. I know some people who are in the chat, you know, they always say Tahashi, and that's the way that they talk. And they're like, how Tahashi? And I say how Tahashi, you know, and they're like, what's up Tahashi? And how you doing? And so any of those words, if you could start switching out hello for huh, or hello for how, or if you could start switching out cuz for men, you would say Tahashi. For females, you would say Hankashi. So if you're familiar with those words, use them. If you're not familiar with them, you know, in future classes, we're going to be going over those things. So again, just, on my own, I'll kind of go over the little script here again. So you start off for females, huh? Or you'd start off for males, how? Or how medakyapi if you're in a more formal environment. How medakyapi, you're talking to more than one person, a group of people, then you're like, hello, my relatives. How medakyapi? Arthur amakyapi or Arthur amakyapido. Dokadanichyapi he. We maybe could have flipped those around. Dokadanichyapi he, what's your name? Arthur amakyapido. Nishto. So Nishto is not on the list, but if you remember it, then you remember it. How hiya washte shicha dokadyaun he. Dokadyaun he. How are you? Washte won. Washte won. Or you want to put a little swagger on it. Washte won do. Washte won we. And me, when I talk, I don't know, for some reason, when I start to speak and I really get into speaking language, I almost like turn into the elder that I hear in my head, where I'm like, I start to talk and then my voice kind of changes a little bit into a Dakota voice where I'm like, oh, Dokadyo, and I just kind of like hear, I don't know how to explain it, but I think it's that pride coming out, where when I start speaking the language, it's like, I'm excited, I'm happy. And so, like I said at the beginning of the class, I want all of us to be that way when we see each other. How? Dokadyo, or huh? Dokadyo, how are you doing? Washte won. And even if we just said that little thing, if you imagine all 1,000 of our tribal members being able to say, how? Dokadyo, washte won, nishto, washte. Have that little conversation with each other when they see each other. How much farther that would bring us into that pride of speaking Dakota. And so I think, from Kim, unleash the inner elder, think of that, have that inner elder in your head kind of coming out when you speak the language. Think about how your mom used to say things, or your grandma, when you were younger, how people used to talk around you. Think about Grandpa Art, the way he said things. I like to say he's the one who taught me Danikatu. When I first heard it, I knew what he was saying kind of subconsciously, or just because of the context. Because I walked up, I said, ho, ka, and he said, Danikatu. And as soon as I heard it, I'm like, washte, nishte, oh, washte. And he just kind of did his little head nod thing, yeah, washte. And I'm like, all right, cool. But, think about that, the way that you've heard things growing up. And I know a lot of us in here have heard words growing up, like I said, shunka, where we don't necessarily have to be taught them because we just know what shunka means. Or, wahampi or mini, And so I just encourage everybody to use every word you know. That's pretty much it for class today. We're going to have class again on Wednesday at 4.